what is autonomy? What is a collective decision-making process? So, for instance, if we have technology now that can identify concussions before that person is presenting, and we can imagine a world where technology will be able to identify the risky behavior of a play. Is it likely to lead to injury or not, so on and so forth. And is it the coach's responsibility to then yank that player? What is the agency that the player has, that the athlete has to say, I feel fine, I want to stay in the game? Do you yank Michael Jordan from the famous flu game, right? If he says, I'm fine enough, he goes on to drop 60-plus points, right? So, we're going to have a lot of these conversations, but that's one of the things that I am really encouraged by is the fact that we're having these conversations, that the SEC saw the value and the importance of pulling people together, because it's going to be hard to put that genie back in the bottle, right? And so we have to start asking these conversations, having these conversations and asking these questions, as unlikely as they may be, because it's going to be in those edge cases where a lot of vulnerable people can fall through the cracks. So.
Yeah, if I may, we've kind of mentioned the word data and bias. Just kind of thinking this may be a little bit too deep of a thought this early in the morning, but if over-reliance on all that can become very formulaic, and the last thing that, we would want, ESPN, right, is a formulaic approach to college football. And so I think what, we certainly are familiar with the negative aspect of bias, and we wouldn't want that. And what makes it challenging as we think about training these models is if we get these outliers or where the bias is, that can really skew the results in terms of the reliability of these systems. But a perspective could be that intuition that we feel, or that bias that informs our decision making, that expertise in some aspect is actually what becomes more valuable. So I'm hopeful that an impact of AI in terms of decision making and things like that could be that it actually places more of a premium on the true expertise and decision making, that intuition, that decision, the desire of like, no, it feels right to do it this way, even though the model says do it this way. And so for us humans kind of thinking about, and those of you with children, thinking about how you make those decisions, how you feel comfortable in those decisions, the kind of intuition you build over time, that becomes very important as we think about where AI is headed, so that we're not just bots who are doing whatever the AI model says, but we're actually able to see that, augment our decision making, but actually be truer to what our expertise is. And I think that's a real opportunity that could exist.
Yeah, I agree. And to go back to one of the things that Dion said that I really like about artificial intelligence and the way that it's applied is when you think about proximity to the decision making, and when you think about agency of people who are going to be affected, even though artificial intelligence sounds incredibly difficult, it really isn't. And so I think as we educate more people about the nature of artificial intelligence, what it involves, the decision-making processes and so forth, we'll provide a lot more agency to people who are going to be affected. Local knowledge is going to be really important in shaping these models, and I think that's one way where we can affect the ethical nature of it, the lack of bias that we hope to achieve and so forth. That's promising about artificial intelligence. And so as you, in your daily lives, talk to people and they think it's a horrific black box that they'll never understand, I try to encourage them, this is something you can understand, thank goodness. And so, trying to learn more about artificial intelligence and the tools that are used, I think, can be helpful. So, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say that, right now we need to make sure we understand that these are tools that we can use to help inform decisions. I think that we could have provided any AI all the data on Tom Brady and it wouldn't have picked him to be, a multi-Super Bowl winner. So we need to make sure that we understand that. Sometimes when we're interacting with them, they seem really intelligent and really smart, but they're really not at the end of the day. They're just making predictions based on the data they've been fed. So you can take that and help let that inform your decisions, but you shouldn't let it be the decision maker.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that too. I think it's incredibly important to have a human in the loop with AI, generative AI currently. At some point, in the future, you can debate allowing it to have direct interaction, but certainly if anything that we do at ESPN down the road, we absolutely will have a human in the loop, reading, approving, editing, helping make that human better, smarter, stronger, faster.
Well, it should be augmented intelligence, right? It's not, to me, I like that name much better than artificial intelligence, because there's certainly negative bias, and there's a coach will go in and recruit a player, and they've got a mental model of who the player they want and what the player that they need, by example. So what AI can do is just put that into a model. Like we were working with Sevilla FC, which is a football club, soccer club, in a Spanish soccer club. And anyway, they came to us and they said, look, we've got 200,000 game player reports that we have to go through. It takes 400 hours for us to go through. So they put that mental model and they create an AI model for it. AI doesn't get tired, right? It's not going to skip pages. So it can actually add more consistency. And then it's a matter of minutes. They go through those player reports. They're able to identify the players they're interested in. And they augmented intelligence, instead of spending all the time going through reports and exhausting themselves, then they replace that with, hey, I'm going to do face-to-face conversations so we can find the right player that's been selected based on the models that in the scoring that we need. So you need to know the models, the scoring, but it's always augmented intelligence from my perspective.
You heard it here. It's now augmented intelligence. All right, so one of the areas where AI is flourishing is in marketing. So I'm going to turn to Matt Landers for this next question. Only a few college athletics programs are really completely self-supporting or profitable, and all programs are looking to increase their bottom line. What are some ways in which AI is transforming the business of college sports at universities?
Yeah, I think that new wave of tools, specifically generative AI, plays well with marketing. I think that, some programs are going to be more staffed than others in the marketing area. And generative AI allows people to do more with less, which is cliche, but it is true in this case. Like, imagine you're going to, you get a new product, you design a new hoodie, you want to sell that, generate some revenue. In the past, you might have needed to have some production value around taking the product shots, create some copy, create ads. Like, there's a lot that goes into just selling merchandise. You don't just put it on your website and pray. Now with generative AI and image generation in particular, maybe you don't need as high of a production value of a product shoot. You could take one, have AI upscale the resolution, remove the background, and enhance the lighting, very easily without needing to be a professional in like Photoshop or something, right? Get better product images, which are going to convert better. Also, when you go to create ads, maybe you provide the guidelines around the ads that you want, like maybe provide some copy, some headlines, some descriptions, and now like in Google Ads, you can say automatically create assets. You can enable that, which will allow us to try to match what you've told us and what we know about your business to copy that's going to respond better to users' queries whenever they provide those in search. So I think there's a lot of tools available to marketers now to help them get campaigns off the ground faster and cheaper than they could have in the past. That's not to say that it replaces these very high and expensive campaigns where we have very capable humans that can do all of this, but not every campaign needs to be to that level, I don't think.
Yeah, that gets back to the point of a human in the loop, right, and that these tools are, in fact, tools. Yeah, very good point. Sean, as you think about marketing and advertising, what do you see on the horizon for AI and its role in college sports, whether it's the schools, the conferences, or the associated business around college sports?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Good morning, everybody. Sean Donovan, Chief Innovation Officer at TRG. Fortunate enough to be a partner with the SEC doing their branding and advertising. For those of you in person, check out our hologram and our XR experience right down the hall. When I think about AI and the moment we're in right now, I don't actually think about this as a data or a tech piece. We are standing on the shoulders of academic research tech giants, right, of the past 50 years. This is a people revolution. It's a people experience revolution. It's a human experience revolution, right? If we think about Web 1, when it was developed, it was to launch missiles, launch rockets, and chat, right? It was just a glorified chat room. And then people started using it, and they realized, I can promote my business, right? I can have my own website. This device came out, and people all of a sudden could take videos right? And the rise of social, that was not the intended use of this device, right? So I'm most excited about, as hundreds of millions of people experiment with this technology, what are they going to create next? What's the next Picasso of AI, right? As we've talked about, it does allow fast and cheap things to happen. For those of you that haven't played around with AI, try it. When I get a task, the first thing I do is say, well, can AI help me? I know a little bit about a lot of things, and AI is really, really good at taking me from 0% to 70%, right? It's not going to give me an A+, right? The human is still going to outperform the AI, but it gives me so much of an advantage to augment my skill set and learn things really, really quickly, right? I now have all of human history that I can, if I prompt it correctly, go from knowing nothing about it to about 70%. And that's just amazing to wake up to, right? The efficiency piece is where a lot of the attention is right now. And in advertising, right, you can get good, cheap, and fast. And we're getting to the point where you can now do all three of those, right? Historically, you had to pick two. I'm most interested in finding the good, right? As content is democratized, as everybody in this room understands these AI tools, that's really, really interesting, right? Everybody has the opportunity to be a creator. Some of that is going to get homogenized, right? There's going to be a time period where all content is going to start to look the same, right? And as we have these tools, so we now have the same tools as ESPN, as Hollywood. Some of our students can now create things just like a Hollywood studio can. When everybody can do that, the best idea is still going to win. We all tune into ESPN because of the thought leadership, the insight, the idea behind what they are presenting, right? So as you're experiencing the technology, don't forget that it's going to be the power of your idea that, and how you use this technology that is going to help you win as a human.
So let's keep.
I mean, I wouldn't say. I'm going to go there. I tell myself I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do it. I wouldn't say that AI allows folks to compete with Hollywood today. You know, like it's not quite that advanced yet. But I would say it certainly allows someone in their house in the Netherlands or someone in their basement at Auburn to certainly put out a product that is very professional in nature, but there's still a ton of value in historical creatives. There's a ton of value in the apparatus of industry that AI isn't anywhere close to replicating or replacing, but it certainly does bring up someone with very little experience or expertise to a level of output that is amazing and fascinating, but there's still a giant gap between, like, you know, Hollywood and like what an AI model can do. And I know that's not what you're insinuating, but like, I don't know, I feel like it's part of like what I want to get across here. Like, there's a big gap between where AI is today and where like major productions, and it's going to take years and years and years and a ton of development, and it might never get there, but it's certainly bringing up what was zero to something that's very respectable and saves a lot of time and a lot of effort, and certainly makes a lot of creatives potentially better, stronger, and faster, but there's certainly the need for those creatives today and into the future.
I mean, we can disagree on a definition of Hollywood, right? But if you think about a $2 million or $10 million production budget, right? A director's first piece, right? There are plenty of film festivals right now that are highlighting generative film, right? The MoMA has its first generative art piece in its permanent collection, right? So although it may not be on replacing all of Hollywood, right? If you're not looking for, if you don't have the luxury of a $100 million budget, a much smaller team can use these tools to create high-quality output a lot faster.
Well, I think we can agree on the complementary nature of AI, one way or another, right? Like, if you're a developer, if there's 10 steps to code, now you could do like the first 4 with AI, and then you finish it up. I'm sure the Hollywood analogy is someplace in there as well. It's about productivity, about automation that didn't exist previously.
This is a fascinating conversation, actually, and I probably have more questions than answers, but I think the thing that I take away from it right now is to challenge our definition of legacy media. Like, what is Hollywood, right? What are the platforms that allow us to actualize and live our best and highest selves, which I think is kind of like the ultimate goal of humanity. And, you know, you're also thinking about technology, right? If you do it well, it collapses. It collapses the time that it takes to get, you know, a certain task done. And at some point it disappears. And what I mean by that, I mean, you think about like the first computers and how they took up entire homes, right? And now we literally have orders of magnitude, you know, higher computing power within our phones. It's become invisible. Same Hollywood, right? There was like a massive apparatus that you had to break into to get to the top, and now you can literally bring Hollywood into that person's home. They're creating, you know, comparable content that is compelling, engaging, with graphic design, all of that. And so it's forced me to think about like what is that next step. And you know, we were talking earlier, and I do fear about society and how it embraces and uses AI and the impact that AI will have on it. But just listening to you all has kind of given me a bit of hope as well when I frame it that way, because now, like, what are the benefits that once health tech, for instance, kind of leaves the healthcare system and it is within our phone, right? And there's stuff out there now where literally you can take, apologies in advance, your own stool samples, right? Enjoy the visual, right? But I have now data almost in real time that will let me know if there is something that I need to escalate to a doctor, right? My PSA levels and things of that nature. And so I think it is going to be very impactful and beneficial in that way when we think about how it's going to leave some of these traditional models of delivery, and it's going to be literally in our own pockets.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right? So fast and cheap, right? Everybody kind of understands that AI can kind of do that. It's up to us as humans to remember that we have to do the things that only humans can do, right? It's the human in the loop. It's that human creativity that is going to connect the dots that the AI has surfaced that allows us, I think, hopefully, just not to create a bunch of subpar content and create a worse version of the internet in society.
David, if I go back to the original question, I think around the idea, something very important in marketing in that aspect is how well you tell your story. I teach in our Harvard College of Business. I teach an intro to information systems management. It seems like a nerdy class, but I teach all the business students. We're an Adobe Creative Cloud campus. What that means is all of our students have access to all of the creative suites from Adobe. And so in my class, I'm able to use that and use the generative capabilities, the AI capabilities. So my students who aren't majoring necessarily in fields where they need to be able to do communication or marketing are able to at least learn what those tools are and how to use those tools in the context of, hey, what if I want to use those tools to better tell the story of how I understand this material or the different kinds of experiences I can get. And so I think speaking to those themes of democratized access, you know, you referenced, Kevin, the student at Auburn who's in the basement, but maybe if they're in my class, there's actually windows, but they, you know, but they can understand what these tools are, what the capabilities are. And I think what it does is it opens up their minds and horizons in terms of what is possible, what can we do with these technologies. Otherwise, it's very technical to try to use some of those softwares. It's very technical to try to use some of those tools, but hopefully they're able to kind of do those first iterative examples, try it out, and see what the possibilities are, and become at least better at understanding the framework of how do I tell the story around this, or how do I better understand this concept, whether it's trying to understand how to pass a test. So can this be a tutor? Can this help me understand better? Or it's from a marketing perspective, I've got to create a flyer. How do I create a good flyer? What does that even mean for this event? You know, do I have to create everything from scratch every time? No, there are tools out there that can to get you started, get that first draft in, and so, you know, as we think about the economic impact of talent shortage and the ability to like be able to do more work with less, and all of those kinds of other trends that are going on, these kinds of tools can be important as people become, entrepreneurial, thinking about starting their own business. Do you have to go out and hire a bunch of people before you understand what you're trying to do in your business, or can you use these tools to kind of get yourself out the gate at least. So I think from that perspective, it creates a lot of opportunity, a lot of options, and a lot of potential, even if it's not that final finish. I agree with Kevin. It's not going to be that Hollywood blockbuster, but it's certainly good for that first iteration and first idea.
One last comment on Hollywood. I think the tools, throughout the history of tools being provided to everyone, all it does is raise the ceiling and the floor. Hollywood has these tools too. They're going to be better at using them. They have more money. At the end of the day, the more money you put into a project, the better the output in general. I don't think that's going to go away.
So as we think about marketing and advertising, I want to think about it for a moment from the student-athlete perspective. Certainly social media has revolutionized how college athletes promote their brand. I expect AI might have similar potential. So Sean, I'm going to turn to you again. Do you see ways in which student-athletes can use AI to benefit themselves in terms of branding?
There's tons of ways that they can do it, and I think the most exciting thing is for student athletes right now, they're at the tip of the spear of figuring this out, right? They have just as much a chance as figuring this out as a multi-billion-dollar brand, right? There's a lot of talk of who's going to be the first billion-dollar one-person brand. It may be a student athlete that has been interviewed this week at SEC Media Day, right? So this democratization of content, this augmentation of skills, they're obviously very talented athletes, right? Taking that leadership potential that they have and unlocking some of these democratized creative tools on this device or on their laptop means they don't necessarily need a team of 20 people, 20 handlers figuring that out. They can now have one or two smart mentors that are helping them get there much faster than maybe they were 5-10 years ago. So for all the student athletes out there, remember your name is your brand, right? Don't think that just the logos on your shoes are the only brands that are out there. You are in the process of establishing your brand here at SEC Media Day, and this technology really allows you to unlock that potential in ways that really haven't been possible before. So if you think about influencers and YouTube channels, right? Now the YouTube channel doesn't have to be just you in front of your laptop, right? You can now really easily create interesting background footage. You can pull in interesting stats about your unique profile of all of the plays that you have done or your career and how you've changed from middle school to high school to projecting into the professional league, right? So we've talked a little bit about the creative piece. On the data side, if you're not really good at Excel and you didn't take a bunch of accounting classes, you can use the same technology to look at your social media following, look at your posts, ask it to analyze it, right? Ask it to analyze it from different points of view, right? So you can ask it to look at your content from a local perspective versus a national perspective versus an international perspective. You can look at it, what would your rival school think of your content, right? AI is really good at giving you a point of view from different personalities and different viewpoints that you might not have. So don't be afraid to ask the AI to think in a way that you are not used to thinking, right? So that's one of the ways that it can really easily, just through natural language, augment what you're currently doing.
Yeah. Anyone else? So I think everybody probably would agree we're still living in the wild west of name, image, and likeness. I think oftentimes it's all over the place. So Asim, I'd like to turn to you. Do you see a role for AI in trying to estimate a player's value to a given team given their performance and other factors? And will it help universities brand and value, help them estimate the brand and value of a given player? So from the player's perspective, can they use it to estimate their own brand? From the university's perspective, how much should they invest in a given player?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, David. I think the short answer is not at this time, but that's certainly possible. I think we get into a lot of risk and ethical questions if we start thinking about how to have AI systems that somehow associate value. And I think I'd go back to just the importance of expertise and the importance of decision-making from those experts, from you who are experts. That becomes very important. So I would hesitate to say that an AI system can somehow be the decision maker in terms of attaching value to any kind of human ability. what I think what it can do is, some of the examples you shared earlier, for example, Al, the simple amount of data points that are possible, it's not feasible for a human to analyze all of that data in a timely way. And I think that's where it could be beneficial to have AI systems that augment that decision making by being able to analyze the information much faster. Every time there's practice, every time there's film that you're trying to review, those kinds of things, there's always ability to inform that decision making. But I think the more compelling option really is that these tools allow player agency. If you look at the macro trend of where things seem to be headed in college sports, the shift is away from these central ideas of control to students having a larger voice, student athletes having a larger voice. And I have to say, I admire our student athletes. If you think about just the pressure on their time and their expectations, and just, with the advent of social media, how they're much more visible, these kinds of tools can help them in a responsible way make better sense of what they're trying to accomplish and how they're trying to accomplish that. So responsibly being able to use these tools to create tutoring systems, because tutoring is not, we provide lots of tutoring. Our folks do an excellent job. I work with them, and they're incredibly dedicated, but they're not available 24/7, right? So all of our students, including the student athletes, being able to responsibly use these tools to understand the material better, understand what they're trying to accomplish from an education and academic perspective better. But then also, sometimes you're coming from a small town and you go to a campus and, all of a sudden you've got 90,000 or 100,000 eyes on you every weekend. How do you make a better sense of what that brand means, or how do you tell your story? How do you take advantage of the opportunities around you, around NIL? So from that context, maybe nobody's ever taught you how to have a social media marketing strategy. So if there's a particular brand that's interested in your services from that perspective, a student athlete could use generative AI to develop some kind of hey, help me develop some posts around social media that are relevant from this perspective or relevant for this brand, and makes you more marketable from that perspective, gives you the agency in terms of developing and nurturing and cultivating your own brand. So lots of potential opportunity from that perspective of students being able to feel greater ownership of their own brand, of their own abilities, of their own what's possible as well. I think it's very exciting from that. We're just kind of really talked about the text aspect, maybe in some cases the graphics aspect, where AI is really headed. What the possibility of that is, are the things that we don't even really quite know what's going to be possible in terms of video analysis, in terms of just predictive models that can inform so many other things. I think that's where players, as well as the responsibility of our faculty and our administrators who work with all students, being able to say, what is the responsible way, what is the ethical way of using these tools to understand that material better becomes even more important.
Indeed. One of the things that we talk about a lot is fan experience. Every college team, every conference is trying to increase their bottom line, get more viewers, and so forth, and fan experience is a big part of that. Kevin, I'd like to turn to you and your experience at ESPN and ask, how can AI improve the fan experience? What can a college athletic department do to be more successful in this space?
Sure, yeah. Again, I'll reiterate, I don't have any news to break, but I can talk generally about the industry and what all folks in media are thinking about. And for me, I think hyper-personalization is a giant opportunity for AI. And I'll do it in the context of a personal story. And so I ran track at the University of Rhode Island. I wasn't quite good enough to make the SEC, but I enjoyed my collegiate experience in the Atlantic 10. And so I follow the men's and women's track team, and I learned by watching Instagram that a female javelin thrower was top 10 in the country and made the NCAA meet. And I watched that highlight on Instagram. That event aired on ABC and ESPN, but I'm watching the highlight on Meta's platform. And it's because we lack the ability or the opportunity to be having AI crawling the audio and the video and clipping content in real time and surfacing it to me. And I think everyone in the industry is looking about how they can serve the fan. At ESPN, our mission statement is very simple: to serve sports fans anytime, anywhere. And so how could we in the future look at utilizing AI to really hyper-personalize? So I wake up in the morning, I have my own personally curated highlights. It knows that I'm a fan of the University of Rhode Island, knows that I like track and field, and so it can clip out. And everyone at that NCAA meet, if you're at Auburn or Texas or Oklahoma, any of them, you can have your own individual curated highlights. And so I think that's going to really unlock a level of hyper-personalization. And then on the advertising side, I think, I'm not in advertising, but, fans want contextual ads. They don't want to see the same ad 9 times in a row, and so, with the right amount of personalization in AI, you can get really accurate to what fans want to see in those ad breaks. I mean, I have a 9-year-old daughter. I got her a cat for her 9th birthday. I don't have a dog, but I'm buying cat food every month. When I get that Purina ad, why can't that dog be digitally replaced with a cat? Why can't that ad be, through generative AI, hyper-focused and targeted specifically at me? That virtual product placement, all that technology exists today. And again, I'm not breaking any news. I'm not saying we're doing that tomorrow. But just generally speaking, the technology at a certain point will unlock a level of hyper-personalization that, in my opinion, will serve fans better based on available technology.
I'd like to jump in on this one if I could. I think it's about the fans, right? This is the engine that drives everything and the reason we're here. I was reading the other day that I think it was Statistica that said by 2028, global sports is going to be worth $680 billion. I mean, hopefully they can pay Atani's salary and some of the others, that go along with it. Anyway, IBM's focus has really been, we've done recruiting and all kinds of different things, but the fan experience is really the fun part of it. And as we're looking at the fan experience, it's not about replacing humans or anything. It's about finding white space. So essentially, we're trying to find an experience that doesn't exist today. So some of the partners that we're working with, by example, are Wimbledon, the U.S. Open for tennis, the Masters, ESPN. We're working. I found out that Kevin's approving some of my foundational models that we're pushing in ESPN. So this has been worth it just in that.
Shout out to ESPN Fantasy by Watson X.
That's right. Fantastic. But anyway, we work with this, and where most people see like tennis, we see data, lots and lots and lots of data, and that's where AI can come in. It can personalize, as you mentioned. What's an ace? How many aces? We can do, what their power score is, their advantages, their disadvantages. We put all this together in analytics. Today, like the U.S. Open, by example, has 250, I think, singles matches across 17 courts. Wimbledon has 19. Most of that focus is on the center court. So that means all that experience, the personalized experience, maybe your favorite player is outside in one of those other courts. What AI allows us to do is to use AI commentary, spoken commentary, and closed captioning on all those other courts. So that you can now watch those courts with added advantage of insights. And where the predictions are, et cetera. The Masters the same way. 80% of the commentary is not associated with any of the shots. In other words, there's only 20% of the commentary covers the golf shots that are out there, and there's like 20,000 shots or golf swings that are taken across the entire tournament. So now we can cover all that. And not only that, we look at where the ball lands, what the coordinates are, how it compares to history. Maybe it's a little too much, but you can essentially look at all those insights and be able to take advantage of it. So it personalized it, as you mentioned, like never before. And with ESPN, you got 12 million, I think it's like 12 million fantasy subscribers. And what we do there is we look across all the player information, we look across, blogs, podcasts, and then we identify, we put all that together and we essentially come up with stardom, situm, predictions, as well as who will win that game. So, I think it's better in the fan experience significantly, but it's all finding that white space that is not covered today.
Yeah, I think that point is important, like additive. certainly, I mean, we're not doing any of the AI commentary today. I want to be clear on that. But I think moving forward, there's an opportunity to increase incremental content. Like, we're not looking to replace any human. I want to be very clear. We're not looking to replace humans. AI commentary is not a place where it's replacing folks that are doing commentary. But if you've got incremental content that is not currently covered, that's a service to the fan, and it's not a detractor of existing talent. It's something that can provide additive, incremental, that's growing the pie. So, I like what we're seeing, but I want to be clear, we haven't done any of that at ESPN yet, but it's certainly an opportunity to add incremental content to SuperServe fans that doesn't exist today.
As a fan, I think where it's most compelling is where a lot of different kinds of technology trends are coming together. So, virtual reality or augmented reality, artificial intelligence with its predictive modeling. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug in, can I see what the view is from the quarterback's view or the linebacker's view, and then be that armchair quarterback, or be that second quarterback kind of, well, what if he would have thrown it this way? What would have happened? I think there are some really compelling. We're at the just like that inflection point, I feel, of some interesting possibilities of creating that in the game experience. And I think based on what I've seen of what's possible, I'm really excited about it. We're certainly experimenting with some of that in the academic world in terms of what it's like to create those immersive experiences. But I'm really, the fan experience from a being in the game perspective would just be incredible.
Yeah, IBM partnered with IBM's Vision Pro for that. I mean, there's a lot coming. That's going to be fantastic.
I love all this stuff that IBM's been developing in that space. We often use your guys' case studies as an example of kind of next-gen brand experiences. And we've all seen the kind of the second screen kind of taking over, connecting to the awesome broadcast content. I'm most excited about what's going to come next, right? No surprise, the AI person's into Star Wars, right? But if you think of the chess, the hologram chess, or other things that either might be happening via spatial computing or some other thing in your phone, for those fans that want to continue that game day experience before the game, after the game, all weekend long, this technology unlocks new creative opportunities to extend those data points that we're capturing, like the tennis things that you mentioned, right? So what happens when you're able to relive some of those moments or instantly learn from your favorite players pros and cons of what they did last weekend? So it gets really exciting about how we start doing other things when we use that from an idea perspective to create something new, not just something that we've wanted to do for 20 years.
Yeah, Kevin and Al, for example, the game replays, they could be like choose your own adventure game replays of, but what if we would have done that instead, and that could be really...
Well, we did implement, for Wimbledon, we had a catch me up feature, so if you missed some time, you could come back in, it'd have AI commentary, it'd have the statistics that would fill you in on your favorite player, all players as a part of the tennis tournament.
We're really at the precipice of all of these amazing things coming to fruition. So I want to bring it back to student athletes again for just a second. You guys have spent time with student athletes, I know, and as university faculty, Dr. Ali and I have as well, and I'm constantly astounded by all of the education that they have to deal with, the practice that they have to deal with, and so forth. So Matt, I want to ask you a question. Can AI help identify when students are struggling in a given university course, and can it provide tutoring services or other things that might help them academically?
Yeah, I think this is an area that AI is well prepared to do today. I started a coding boot camp in 2015, and in our curriculum, we added a chatbot that can help students as they run into issues while they're trying to learn how to code. And I think, your initial thing that you want to ask a chatbot is, hey, what's the answer to this question? But we were able to provide a system prompt to the chatbot to say, hey, don't just give the answer to students, use the Socratic method and lead them to water. And we have found that is a much more effective way to get people to actually learn the material. So I think it's going to be important for universities to teach students how to use LLMs in order to assist in education. But as far as student athletes go, I mean, there's, 200,000 Division I student athletes? I looked that up. And I don't think it's realistic to say that everyone's going to get a human tutor. And I think that these tools are very well prepared today to assist, especially in topics that are very well known and understood. So maybe as you get further along in your curriculum, into the more niche subjects that you might in your major, that you may want to have more human involvement there. But for the first 2-3 years, I would imagine that most of these LLMs have the knowledge embedded in their models to assist students, not just by giving them the answers, but also helping them understand the material better.
Yeah. I remember asking a student not long after ChatGPT kind of came into our public consciousness about how they use it in their course, and the student said, this particular course is an online course. I'm supposed to watch videos and then answer questions, and I don't have a didactic they didn't use that word. I don't have a relation. I can't ask the faculty member a question and get an answer in real time, but I can open a ChatGPT instance and I can have a dialogue with ChatGPT about the course material. I can ask them to dumb it down for me. I can ask them to tell it to me 5 different ways, and that was really remarkable to think about. One of the things that I think about as a faculty member, and one of the things that we talk about at the University of Florida a lot, is in a world where we have so much information in our phone at our fingertips. Furthermore, in a world where we can ask a large language model to take a large volume of information and distill it down to the basics, it really begs the question, what are we supposed to be teaching our students right now? Right? They live in a world where they have a lot of answers at their fingertips, and so we as university faculty really have to evolve and think about what we're teaching. Furthermore, we also have to think about how we're testing the students on whatever it is we decide we're going to be teaching them, and that's a watershed moment for higher education.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a student athlete that also English isn't their first language.
Yeah.
I think AI can really assist there too, being able to translate materials into their primary language, being able to even translate videos. Like, we're very close to being able to give an AI a video and have it reproduce the video in a language of your choice. Like, that's right around the corner.
Amazing. So, Dion, you represent tech both in Birmingham and across the state of Alabama, where you're trying to build out and strengthen this entire tech ecosystem. It's enormous. What are the potential linkages that you see between a comprehensive tech ecosystem like you're trying to build and AI and then scholar athletes in the SEC?
Well, the first thing, and I failed to mention this at the beginning, this is very important. War Eagle. No Auburn fans on this, Alabama fans up here, right? I'm joking. But yeah, so I really am excited, and I truly believe that the SEC is probably best positioned to start having those conversations and ask those questions. So, I mean, just one shout out for the AI Consortium, right? The first and the only, as I understand it, in the nation. For folks, I just got to give a shout out to Lene for orchestrating this and the fact that we're having these conversations now. And if you think about, the SEC, I think objectively is the best conference. And I think about objectively, and I think about the separate institutions and the legacy and the mind share, just the gravitas and the weight that comes with those institutions. I'm imagining now a world where student athletes, what did you say, was it 200,000? I didn't look it up, right? But most of those student athletes, they will go pro in something other than professional sports. And so now we can start having conversations. Well, what is it like for them to be proximate to all of this, and not just on the periphery, but to actually have them embedded in it? I mean, for instance, if maybe material science is something that I am interested in, and so we know that technology and AI can be used to figure out how you create helmets that reduce concussions, and equipment that reduces the violent impact, and things of that nature, and that's a material science question, right? And so now imagine if you have that student athlete that is proximate to that process, asking those questions, the human in the loop, right? I think that would be incredibly fascinating, and I think that we're going to see roles emerge as new platforms, as like you mentioned, I think the App Store, right? After the iPhone, like it gave birth to a completely new industry that nobody really even saw coming. And so, like, what is going to be the new industry around AI and machine learning that comes that student athletes can be smack in the center of, and to help us build and envision what it looks like. That is like super exciting to me. And then you layer on top of that things such as entrepreneurship, right? And so now not only are they playing the sport that they love and getting all of the benefits that come with that, they are proximate to stuff around material science and just in engineering. And now if we have entrepreneurship as a part of it, we can teach them the skills necessary to innovate, right? Which is just the creative, or the practical application of creativity, right? And that's not mine, right? But like I love that definition of it. And so they can start having those thoughts and then go from concept to concrete, right? Maybe in 10 years they launch their own helmet company, right? Or even something that is a component of the helmet. There are just so many ways that they can have a real impact into the industry as it currently exists. But how cool is it for us to think about what is going to be in the future? And so I think just putting together what that looks like. The SEC just did the pitch competition, I believe, right, of student athletes. And so we're already starting to kind of see gestures being made in that direction. So I think that's how we look at it, right? If you look at all of the actors, all of the people that are involved in this process, right, you have faculty, you have student athletes, you have mentors, and it's an entire apparatus, and then just envision what it is like to go through those steps, to go through that lived experience, and then build models around that. That is super exciting just to consider.
Yeah, agreed. So if you don't know, the Southeastern Conference has been way ahead on artificial intelligence. They placed a bet on the importance of artificial intelligence, not only in college sports, but in student-athlete lives and so forth, way back before ChatGPT came into our public consciousness. The Southeastern Conference wants to have an academic mission as well as a sports mission, and the first big endeavor that they took on was artificial intelligence. And so Dr. Ali and I have known each other for quite some time now. We're both members of the AI Consortium for the Southeastern Conference, where all of our member institutions have faculty members and administrators who are working on artificial intelligence at their universities, meeting to share ideas, to collaborate, to hold conferences and workshops, to collaborate in research. So, Dr. Ali, I want to give you the last question. And by the way, we're going to stick around for questions afterwards. So if you have questions of your own, when we're done up here, we're happy to stick around and answer questions. But universities are always asking the same question, which is, what can I do to get started? If they're late to the game of understanding the importance of AI and creating, say, university-wide AI initiatives, how can universities get started?
Yeah, thanks for that question, David. The first thing to understand is there is, in fact, it's a challenge for anybody who's listening. I don't think there is any profession that exists today that's not going to be affected by what's possible with artificial intelligence. If you know of one, message me. I'd be curious to have that thought. And so the idea of artificial intelligence as a university effort really becomes compelling because it's rare to have initiatives or efforts at a campus that touch everyone, impact all stakeholders. And so artificial intelligence is one of those generational moments where not only is there an imperative and an importance to understand because it's not going anywhere, but then there's also an opportunity. And so from that perspective, I look at three main things. The first thing I look at is access to artificial intelligence. So are we creating opportunities for, regardless of somebody's economic background or abilities, do they have access to the tools that are going to be the relevant tools that shape the economy, that shape opportunity, that shape upskilling, learning, those kinds of things. So we've been working at, I know we've developed lots of resources at Auburn that are available for anyone in the public. When we say stakeholders, it includes, the very communities that we live in. I know Florida, David, you guys have done incredible work in terms of creating material and access and content to upskilling opportunities from the K through 12 space through professionals. So access becomes very important, being able to learn how these tools work and being able to understand them. The second thing is AI literacy. We've been very focused on how do we create access, how do we create that, and in addition to that access, how do we create the ability to learn what is possible with these technologies, how do they work, what do they actually do, creating those resources and then making them broadly available so that it's sharing that impact so that you don't have to be on a campus to understand that. And so universities have a responsibility, again, to make sure that our future students, prospective students, as well as faculty today, as well as administrators and community members are able to access that upskilling, are able to learn, are able to understand what AI is, and that's how I would define AI literacy. And then the third thing really speaks to the thing that the consortium that we've mentioned is collaboration. These tools are, they aren't going to, the way, something that's interesting to note is most of innovation throughout the past century or so, in the U.S. at least, has happened largely because of government investment. What's interesting about AI is that a lot of the most innovative work is happening at private companies. And so I think from that perspective, our universities, especially public institutions, have a tremendous responsibility to make sure that we're helping people make sense out of what those tools are, what's the responsible usage of them, gaining insights into those systems. And so collaboration becomes very important because the sheer magnitude of what we're talking about, it can't happen in a silo. It can't happen someone doing it in their own office, on the weekends kind of a thing. It really has to be across campus, people working together, across multiple campuses, people working together. I've had the privilege, with David, of meeting monthly with colleagues from around the Southeastern Conference. We talk about these issues in terms of what's possible for research, what's possible for upskilling and AI literacy, what's possible for creating these opportunities, such as the one, getting together today. How do we take that collaborative approach? If we look at the conversation around higher education in the country, a part of that solution to those conversations really is higher education institutions working together. And the SEC emulates that well. At the end of the day, it's a competition on a Saturday, right? But it's a shared competition because, sure, a team wins or loses, but in the SEC, right, both teams are winning, both fan bases are winning. How do we create that same kind of an environment around artificial intelligence? Sure, in terms of, submitting grant applications or reaching out to prospective students, it can feel competitive, but at the end of the day, it's really not, because there's such an importance of working together to make sure that we're lifting all boats, essentially, from that perspective. So I think from a university perspective, those are the opportunities that exist for us.
Yeah, and I can't overemphasize enough the sharing aspect of it. We think of the universities in the Southeastern Conference as being highly competitive, and they are. But in the academic realm, and also in other realms too, including sports, they're also highly collaborative. So at the University of Florida, I guess about 4.5 years ago, we invested a lot of time and effort into teaching AI broadly. Our tagline was AI is for everyone, and it has two meanings. One, everybody can access this and use these tools. They are getting simpler and simpler to use. So it's for everyone in that respect. But AI is also for everyone in the sense that it's relevant to you as a student at the University of Florida or wherever, regardless of what your major is. AI is going to be applied across all disciplines and already is in most. So we're training students across the entire breadth of the university in AI. Currently, we have about 12,000 students per semester taking AI courses, and that's across at least 50 to 60 different majors. And so we've shared all of that knowledge and content with our SEC colleagues. And Asim runs the Biggio Center, which is focused on helping faculty teach at the highest possible level. And so we have all of these resources focused on the student experience and student excellence, and especially us, and especially our student athletes, trying to help them in every way they can. And so we think that artificial intelligence is going to be a game changer. What I'd like to do is ask for closing thoughts from our group here, and we'll wrap up. For me, the closing thought is AI is for everyone. It's accessible to everyone, and it's relevant to everyone. So that's what I'd like to send you home with today. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I just feel really fortunate, immense gratitude just to be in the industry at this point in time. Either I'm too young, too naive, or too arrogant. I'm not quite sure which one of those are to not be afraid of it. I just embrace the moment, embrace the uncertainty, embrace new technology, embrace where just the industry and just sports is going, and it's just exciting. So thanks to the SEC for inviting me. Thanks to their leadership. I'm blown away by how early Florida was on AI and how you have 12,000 students like mandated to take it. I don't know anyone that's doing that, and it's incredible. So thank you to the conference for inviting me.
Matt?
Yeah, I'd echo that sentiment. I'm super excited about what's to come with AI. I think that we're just on like this inflection point of what's going to happen over the next few years, and AI is actually accelerating its own, innovation, and I think that that's just going to continue to increase, and the tools that we're able to produce with AI are going to be critical for people to learn and understand. So it's great to see the universities come together and say, hey, we know this is important. It's important to the future of our students, that they're going to need to understand these tools and be able to use them in order to have a place in the workplace in the future.
Two quick things. One, don't have a point of view on AI if you actually haven't used it, right? The technology is easy to access. Don't be afraid of it. It's not going to bite. So experiment with the technology. And the second, it's overwhelming. The change of pace is overwhelming. As soon as you start thinking about something, you're going to go down a deep rabbit hole and feel overwhelmed. Try and think about it in 3 time horizons. What can AI do for me now, right? So literally right after this meeting, next week, this month. What can it do next? So think about the rest of this year. And then the future, right? None of us can predict the future, right? But how can you start learning today, sampling different technologies, piloting different programs to get ready for whatever's next? We can't predict where this is all going to be 5 years from now, but we know that if you start now, you're going to be ahead of most people.
I wish I could just say ditto to all of that. I'm probably going to plagiarize Kevin. I really appreciate just the optimistic outlook. There are some concerns that I have, but I think they are outweighed by the positives, by the benefits, especially if we just dive in and embrace the uncertainty. And maybe a good way to think about it is just in terms of creativity, right? And I think the World Economic Forum kind of did a report on what the most in-demand skills would be by like 2040, and creativity and collaboration were at the forefront. And so I would encourage everybody in the audience, physically or virtually, just to dedicate a bit of time to diving in and playing around with it. I waste a lot of money subscribing to some of these services, but just to have that opportunity to kind of play around with it and at least acquire a certain knowledge, a familiarity with it that allows me to have conversations like these and interact with folks who are a lot more in the weeds and detailed with it. So, and just thanks for the opportunity to share space with you all.
Yeah, so being in tech, I think we tend to overstate a lot in tech and the impact. I don't think we're overstating AI. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. I think it'll be proven out over the coming years. One thing we didn't talk about, we talked about coaching, we talked about the fan experience. I just want to make sure that the student athletes that are listening, the personalized training that I think that they're going to be able to benefit from AI is going to be immense. It's going to be huge. It's already there today, but we haven't even explored wearables, sensors, things like that are coming. So this is going to be an extraordinary time. Not that I'm advertising, but I got a podcast called Making Data Simple. We talk about these concepts. I have a lot of startups. They're all talking about AI. And in the area of personalization, there was one not too long ago, a company, I won't mention their name, but they actually, you can go to the refrigerator, you can take a picture, and it will come up with, relative to what you had in the refrigerator, the most healthy option relative to what you're targeting, whether you're gaining weight, losing weight. Can you imagine if you were a student athlete? For me, that would have been huge. All I was eating was pizza, I think. Of course, I'd probably still eat pizza if that was the case. But yeah, that may be all. But I mean, this is an extraordinary time, and I think will be proven out over the next coming years. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, again, War Eagle, just the opportunity to be here with some really talented and incredible folks, it's very humbling, and so I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My main thing is get off the sidelines, right? This is something that, if you have a fear about it or if you have uncertainty about it, try it out. I'm going to share a website address with you if you're just trying to look for a free guided resource, just to try to make sense out of where to even get started. It's an AUBI link, so for Auburn folks, you'll understand that, but it's aub.ie. That's our short URL. So aub.ie/howtoai. And if you go to AUBI/howtoai, it takes you to our incredible Big EO Center team has developed some pretty hands-on, experiences of how to just understand how this technology works, how to prompt, get text, images, media, those kinds of things. What are some ethical questions to ask yourself? That resource is available for free for anybody who's interested. So get off the sidelines, try it out. If you get stuck somewhere, if you've got some compelling ideas, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you in terms of what's possible. Thanks.
And lastly, I'd like to say a thank you to Lene McDonald, who organizes our SEC AI Consortium, and for getting us together, and a big thank you to our panelists. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And we'll stick around and answer some questions for you.